Hello everybody, it's Peter with an I, S-T-A-W-A-R-T. Welcome to segment 24 of, I don't know, The Dark Tower, I guess?
Chapter 23. The hues of gold and copper mixed as the sun shined over the horizon for the first time that day. The water looked like liquid bronze. Frank had the impulse to throw a rock and skip it over the water, but he just didn't feel like doing anything besides stare at the paper cup he had slept with the night before. Pottymouth hadn't realized until last night how dearly Frank loved his girlfriend, which was really a cup. He and Frank slept in a tent, away from the haunted house, at the foot of the cliff, on the beach next to the seaside. He had been tossing and turning all night, and Pottymouth didn't know what to think when Frank was murmuring, "I want you to have my children. I want you to have my children." "I didn't even know you had any children," Pottymouth had replied, before he realized Frank was talking in his sleep. The idea of Frank pawning kids off on him seemed pretty lame at first blush, but then he considered all the hard-to-reach places in the engine of the old car he was working on. In the early light of dawn, he found Frank crying with his face pressed up against the cup. Now Frank was awake and standing next to the water, but he obviously wasn't feeling any better. Pottymouth thought about ordering Frank to roll up the sleeping bags and pack up the tent and compliment the orders by calling him a foul curse word, but he decided just to relax. He was enjoying himself. The colors and the smells and the sound of the water lapping on the shore and the fresh feeling of having just woken up made the novel of memory go back a few chapters. And Pottymouth reread the paragraphs that talked about the outing he took with his mom and Gary. He was surprised he could even remember the man's name, but Pottymouth would be surprised if he couldn't remember it. The name was insignificant, and yet Pottymouth couldn't fathom how important it really was. Gary was a guy his mom was going out with for a while. When he first met him, he seemed like a big, strange man, and he smelled like cigarettes and high karate, and his teeth were a little yellow. The only reason why he respected this big stranger was because he was scared of him. But then, when the two were introduced, all fear was lost when the guy started acting all corny and saying, "Hey there, Buck, how you doing?"
Oh, goo 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 goo.
It had sickened young Pottymouth that he was trying so hard to be so friendly. Pottymouth didn't owe him anything, not even a smile. If he had either the guts or the brains for a good insult back then, he would have launched one right then and there, point blank at the guy who had transformed from being a monster into a clown.
You stupid! Oh.
Sitting on one of the logs along the beach, which were polished by the pounding of rough sand and bleached by the harsh rays of the sun, Pottymouth's eyes were on the patches of wild chamomile that managed to grow under the trodden path where the sand became mixed with a tan-brown mixture of dirt and clay at the base of the cliff. But his brain wasn't registering the sight. His eyes were glazed. He looked like a sports announcer listening to the fast-paced information being transmitted into his headphones. He was somewhere back in time. It's tough enough for even a biological pair to get along with their child. After the mother and father spend an hour getting ready to take off in the morning, drive 45 minutes to get to their jobs, work for 8 hours, fight rush hour traffic for an hour, shop for groceries, do the taxes, or take care of any other inconveniences that crop up on a daily basis, and finally pick their child up from the child processing center, parents don't have the energy to nurture their children for the allocated half hour. The half hour of nurturing is usually spent on discipline.
Guilty!
After being in a child processing center all day in a child-safe environment, where they can't hurt themselves, where all their biological needs are met. The kids come home. Their daily homecoming leaves a bad taste in their mouth, when all they get from the parents they see for a half an hour each day is an earful of discipline. Both parents and children find it's a lot more pleasant to spend their time together in different rooms. These two tribes of people, parents and their children, get along with each other only as much as they need to, as much as it takes to tolerate each other. Under certain greenhouse conditions, it's possible for strangers and their children to actually like each other. And for just some guy who's temporarily dating his mom to get along with Potty Mouth was a miracle. At first it was a chore. Potty Mouth knew from a young age how to achieve success at school. If he was bold and mouthed off to teachers and staff, and he proved his bravery by breaking all the rules, other kids would hail him as a chief, a natural-born leader, and he would be respected and admired. He could be the alpha of his own clan. He figured out that the only consequence of being rowdy at school was getting a call home from the principal, thus getting an hour of discipline, attention, from his mother instead of just 30 minutes. And waiting for punishment is like a gladiator waiting for the fray. Not everyone shies away from it. It's sort of exciting. It was like his version of alcoholism. Alcoholism without alcohol. Some people just need the excitement. His being a mouthy rebel, a tribal warrior, created quite a stumbling block, a gap between him and the culture of grown-ups. For some reason, Gary and Potty Mouth got over that stumbling block. Potty Mouth wasn't the only one with stumbling blocks. Gary had them too. For anyone who steps into the role of stepfather, the only thing a kid like Potty Mouth represents is A, a good slice out of his paycheck to buy clothes, food, and school supplies, or B, the guilt for not being suckered into shelling out any extra cash to support somebody else's kid. The special 1 in 1,000 shooting star relationship between Potty Mouth and Gary came about because of Johnny the Python Simmons, Ricky the Mutant, the Rude Warrior Terry Lake, Tex the Cowboy Long, and all the other professional wrestlers that went at it in the ring every weekday night from 6 to 6:30 on Channel 11. Then, at 6:30 Channel 12, the Canadian station, would play it again. Yes, they both loved wrestling and would cheer for the ones they liked and booed for the ones they loved to hate. And when the weird Canadian commercials would come on, advertising things like The Bay and United Buy and Sell,
Furniture Warehouse,
they would wrestle around and act like baboons. When tickets for the upcoming event were advertised on Channel 11, they made plans to go. Young Potty Mouth couldn't believe it. They were going to see Tommy the Hammer pound Nathan Hawk into the tarp at the Tacoma Dome. For a while, he completely forgot about his campaign to become a chieftain. Potty Mouth's mother didn't go to church except for on Christmas and every other Easter. The vows she made at church with her first husband became insignificant when their marriage became boring, and they decided to invent some irreconcilable differences. And she used the Lord's name in vain when she dropped her car keys. But she decided to become very religious when it came to her stance on professional wrestling. She objected to all the face painting and demonic innuendos, and thought it would be best for the child's young developing mind to be filled with good things, things they could provide for each other, like the yeps, nopes, fines, and, I don't know, responses they give each other while eating dinner every night. She decided it would be healthier if the two boys didn't watch that sort of thing on television anymore. Potty Mouth's mom got kind of irritated when she thought about them going off and getting too excited about something.
Potty Mouth's mom suffered a pang of unfairness when those around her felt joy.